The sun hung high over the little western town, burning down on weather-worn boards and dusty streets. It was the kind of midday where men leaned lazy against hitching posts, hats pulled low, and women whispered from porches, while the heat made tempers short and tongues sharp. The sound of a piano stumbled from the saloon, mixing with the buzz of flies and the scrape of boots over hard-packed earth. At the edge of the boardwalk, a cluster of townsfolk had gathered, not out of kindness or concern, but for sport. Their voices rose with the ugly rhythm of gossip turned cruel. "There she is again. Ragged little beggar," one woman sneered, her bonnet tilted back so her words cut clear. "Can't even keep a dress clean. Filthy as the alley cats," another laughed, her finger pointing like a weapon. A man spat tobacco juice into the dirt and muttered, "That's what happens when you ain't got a mother. Nothing but trouble grows out of that." In the center of their circle stood a girl no more than 10. Her dress hung off her thin shoulders, torn at the hem and stained from dust. Dark smudges streaked her cheeks, though whether from dirt or tears, no one could tell. Her hair, tangled and dull, fell across her face, but not enough to hide the way she bit her lip to keep from crying. She shifted from one bare foot to the other, clutching the frayed edge of her sleeve, wishing she could disappear. Yet every movement only gave the crowd fresh reason to jeer. "Where's your man now, huh?" someone shouted. "Oh, that's right, you ain't got one." The words cut deeper than a whip, and laughter followed like a pack of coyotes circling prey. Her throat tightened, but no sound escaped. She had learned long ago that pleading only brought more cruelty. So she stood, silent and small, as if her stillness could shield her from the storm. But silence did nothing against the weight of their ridicule. The more she shrank, the louder their voices grew. A stone skittered across the dust, tossed by a boy emboldened by the laughter. It struck near her feet, raising a puff of grit. The crowd roared approval. The girl's tears slipped free then, hot and unbidden. They traced thin lines down her dirt-stained cheeks, shining in the merciless sun. The town looked on and found amusement. No one stepped forward. No hand reached to shield her. Not one soul dared to break from the safety of the crowd. Until, boot steps, slow, steady, and heavy. Each strike of leather on dirt cut through the laughter like a drumbeat. The crowd's jeers faltered, curiosity prickling at the edges of their cruelty. Heads turned. Faces paled. Someone was coming, and he was not laughing. The boot steps drew nearer, unhurried yet heavy with purpose. The townsfolk turned as one, their sneers and whispers choking off in their throats. Down the center of the street strode a man who carried silence like a weapon. A broad-brimmed hat cast his face in shadow, but the hard line of his jaw and the grit in his stride left no question. This was a cowboy accustomed to being obeyed. His coat, sun-faded and dust-streaked, hung loose across wide shoulders. Spurs glinted faintly with each step, their soft jingle the only sound beneath the oppressive heat. He was not a man known for chatter. His authority came not from words but from the way he filled the space around him. Folks in that town knew him. Some respected, others resented, but none dared to cross him lightly. The cowboy's gaze fixed on the girl, her small figure trembling under the jeers. His jaw tightened, a flicker of anger flashing in the dark beneath his hat. He stopped just short of the crowd, his silence pressing against them like a storm about to break. "What's the meaning of this?" His voice was low, rough as gravel dragged across stone. No one answered at first. A woman tittered nervously, adjusting her shawl. A man coughed, spat into the dirt, then muttered, "Just a bit of fun. Ain't no harm in it." The cowboy's eyes narrowed, pinning him in place. "Don't look like fun to me." The laughter had vanished. Still, a few stubborn tongues couldn't help themselves. "She's worthless," someone called from the back. "No ma, no PA, no name worth speakin', just a mouth to feed that don't belong." A rumble of agreement rose, thin and brittle. The cowboy's hand drifted near the butt of his revolver, not to draw, but to remind them it was there. His silence carried more threat than a shouted curse. He stepped closer, boots crunching against dust. The girl shrank back, but he didn't stop until he stood between her and the crowd. His coat flared slightly in the breeze, the sun catching the edge of the pistol at his hip. "You got a problem with her," he said evenly. "Then you got a problem with me." The words hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. The crowd shifted uneasily. Murmurs swelled. "He's gone soft meddlin' where he shouldn't, protect and trash." But no one dared step forward. No one dared challenge the set of his shoulders, the steel in his voice. The cowboy turned then, crouching low to the girl's level, his hand rough and scarred from years of work, extended not in command but in quiet offer. For a long moment she stared, eyes wide, lip trembling. Then with the smallest nod, she placed her fragile hand into his. He rose, lifting her as though she weighed no more than a feather. Without ceremony, without a single word to the crowd, he walked to his horse tethered nearby. Gasps rippled as he swung her up into the saddle, settling her before him. His hand steadied her, his gaze never leaving the stunned faces glaring back. In that moment, the town knew he had chosen, and he would not look back. The cowboy tugged the reins, and his horse stepped forward, muscles shifting under sun-scorched hide. Dust rose in small clouds behind them, as he steered out of the circle of silence and scorn. Not a soul reached to stop him, though whispers followed like the hiss of snakes in tall grass. The girl clung stiffly at first, her thin arms clutching the saddle horn, her body trembling against his. She didn't look back, but he did. His eyes swept the line of townsfolk, faces twisted with spite, some with fear, some with grudging awe. He gave them nothing more than a cold glare, then turned his horse toward the open road. The farther they rode, the smaller the town grew behind them, until its cruelty was swallowed by distance and heat shimmer. The jeers faded, replaced by the steady rhythm of hoofbeats and the creak of leather. For the first time that day, silence carried no malice. The girl's breath came uneven, little gasps and shivers betraying the fight she'd held inside. She pressed her face against the worn fabric of his coat, as if trying to hide from a world too big and too cruel. "You're safe now," the cowboy said, voice quiet but certain. "Ain't no one gonna touch you while I'm here." She didn't answer. Her trust had been broken too often for words to fix. But when the horse jolted over a rut, her small hands let go of the saddle horn, and clutched his arm instead. That was answer enough. He adjusted his hold, steadying her with a protective arm across her back. It surprised him, the ease with which it felt right. Years of solitude had left his heart a dry riverbed, but now a small stream began to stir, carving its way through stone. They rode on, through rolling stretches of sunburnt prairie. Wind tugged at his hat and tangled her hair. She sat quiet, except for the occasional sniffle, but he noticed her grip loosen bit by bit, fear slowly giving way to something softer. As dusk began to stretch long shadows across the land, he reined in the horse by a creek. The animal lowered its head to drink, and he lifted the girl down carefully, setting her boots onto the soft earth. She wobbled but didn't let go of his sleeve. He crouched to her level, pulling a canteen from his saddlebag. "Here," he said, offering it. "Take a drink. Slow now." Her small fingers brushed his as she obeyed. Water dribbled down her chin, but she drank deep, eyes closing, as though it was the first kindness she'd known in weeks. For a while they sat together on the bank. No laughter mocked her here, no stones flew at her feet, only the trickle of water, and the hush of the prairie wind filled the space. She leaned against him without a word, weary but trusting enough to rest. The cowboy looked down at the fragile figure beside him. Something long buried in his chest, something he thought the years had hardened past repair, began to stir. It was the dangerous tender weight of compassion. By the next morning, whispers had already begun to crawl through the town like wildfire in dry brush. Men leaned close over whiskey glasses in the saloon, muttering. Women gossiped in hushed voices outside the mercantile, their eyes sharp as needles. "Why would he take her?" one asked, voice dripping with suspicion. "Girl's worthless," another spat. "Motherless wild, she'll drag him down." Or worse, a third added, lowering her voice, she'll shame his name. The rumors spread faster than truth ever could. By sundown, they had grown into something darker, accusations that he'd lost his wits, that he'd turned against his own town by defending trash. Some whispered he wanted the girl for himself, twisting the story until every word stank of poison. 2 nights later, they came for him. The cowboy was outside his ranch house, oiling his saddle under the fading light, when the crunch of boots on gravel broke the evening stillness. He straightened, eyes narrowing as a group of men emerged from the gloom. 6 of them, faces grim, led by the town's sheriff, and a pair of local ranchers who had long resented the cowboy's wealth and independence. "Evenin'," the sheriff drawled, though there was no warmth in it. "We hear you picked up something don't belong to you." Behind the window's curtain, the girl's face appeared for a fleeting moment, pale and frightened. "She don't belong to no one," the cowboy answered, his tone calm but hard. "That's the problem," one rancher sneered. "She's a stray, a burden. You think you can just scoop her up and play hero. Town don't need another mouth to feed, least of all hers." Another stepped forward, spitting into the dirt. "She's cursed, lost her ma, no PA to claim her. You keep her here, you drag the rest of us down with her." The words hit like stones, hurled not at the girl, but at the man who dared protect her. The cowboy rose slowly from his work, setting the saddle aside. His hand lingered near his revolver, though he hadn't drawn it yet. His shadow stretched long in the lamplight, his figure solid as iron. "She's under my roof," he said, voice low. "That makes her under my protection. Any man here thinks otherwise can try me." A tense silence followed. The men shifted, hands twitching near their belts. The sheriff cleared his throat, trying to hide the tremor in his voice. "Ain't worth dyin' over, friend. Just send her out. No one'll think less of you." The cowboy's eyes flicked to the window, where he knew the girl was listening, trembling, his jaw clenched. "You already mocked her in the street," he said, stepping forward, his voice carrying like thunder. "You stripped her of dignity, called her worthless, but I say she's worth more than all your spit and venom combined. You think I'll give her back to your cruelty? You don't know me near well enough." The crowd bristled, fingers twitched on pistol grips. For a heartbeat, the world seemed balanced on a knife's edge. Then, quicker than a rattler's strike, one rancher's hand shot toward his holster, only to freeze when the cowboy's revolver gleamed in the lamplight, already drawn, already steady. The click of the hammer echoed like a church bell in the night. The rancher swallowed hard, his bravado shriveling. Around him, the others hesitated, fear bleeding into their anger. The cowboy's gaze swept them, cold and unblinking. "Go on," he said, quiet but deadly. "Make your choice." One by one they faltered. Boots scraped the dirt, as men stepped back, muttering curses, but unwilling to test his aim. The sheriff gave a final tight nod, retreating with the rest. When the dust settled, and their shadows disappeared into the night, the cowboy lowered his revolver, but did not holster it. He stood silent for a long while, listening to the steady beat of his own heart. Behind him, the door creaked open. Small footsteps padded across the porch, and the girl's voice, fragile but clear, whispered, "You stayed." He holstered the weapon then, his hand steady once more. Always, morning came with the toll of the town's iron bell, its clang calling folks to the square. By noon a crowd had gathered, merchants, ranch hands, women clutching their children. The rumor had spread. The cowboy was bringing the girl into town. He rode in slow, the girl seated before him on the saddle, her shoulders hunched, her eyes darted to the ground, expecting the same jeers she had endured before. And indeed, they came, sharp whispers, mocking laughter, cruel smirks. "There she is, the stray, ruin ridin' beside a fool." The girl flinched, tears stinging her eyes, but the cowboy's hand rested steady on her shoulder, grounding her. His silence stretched heavy, and when he finally spoke, his voice cut through the square like a whip. "Enough." The word thundered, silencing the murmurs. He swung down from his horse, then lifted the girl gently to the ground. She clung to his sleeve, trembling, but he stood tall, turning to face the sea of hostile eyes. "You call her worthless," he began, his voice steady, carrying to the edges of the square. "You say she's cursed, a burden, not fit to stand among you." He paused, letting the weight of their words hang in the air. Then his voice deepened, fierce as the mountains. "But her life ain't yours to mock. She's more than your laughter, more than your cruelty, more than your cowardice." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Men shifted uneasily. Women lowered their eyes. A few muttered protests, but no one dared speak above a whisper. He stepped closer, his hand hovering near his revolver, but his eyes burning brighter than steel. "I've ridden through storms that broke stronger men. I've faced down outlaws with blood on their hands, and I tell you now, this child's worth more than the lot of you, because she's got the strength to stand against your scorn, and still breathe." The girl looked up at him then, her lips parted in awe. She had never heard anyone speak for her, never heard her worth declared like a banner held high. The sheriff, red-faced and sweating, tried to bluster. "You don't speak for this town." The cowboy turned his glare on him, cold and unyielding. "I speak for what's right, and if this town's too blind to see it, then it ain't worth standing with." The silence that followed was heavy, but it was no longer mocking. Something had shifted. Shame, slow and creeping, fell over the crowd. A few heads bowed, others turned away, unwilling to meet his gaze. The girl, overwhelmed, pressed her hands to her face as tears broke free. Not the tears of humiliation she had known, but of something new, something tender, relief, hope, the raw, fragile beginning of belonging. She buried her face against his side, her small body shaking. He rested a hand on her shoulder, firm and protective. The cowboy had not only defied them, he had silenced them. By his courage, by his refusal to bend, he had given the girl something no one else had dared: dignity. And for the first time in her life, she believed she might be worth saving. The dust of that day settled, but the memory lingered in every corner of the town. No one forgot the way the cowboy had stood, unshaken before their scorn. No one forgot the fire in his voice, or the way the crowd had fallen silent beneath it. But for the girl, what lingered was something deeper: a hand that did not strike her away, arms that did not abandon, a voice that called her worth more than their cruelty. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the ridges and painted the prairie in gold, the cowboy led her back to his ranch. He dismounted first, then helped her down with care. She hesitated, glancing at the sturdy house before them, its windows glowing with lamplight. For a child who had known only alleys and mocking voices, the sight felt like stepping into a dream she dared not believe was real. He placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "This is home now," he said simply. "Yours as much as mine." Her lips trembled, as though she wanted to speak, but could not find words. Instead she nodded, clinging to the sleeve of his coat, as though it were the only anchor she had. Inside, he made her a place at his table. The stew was plain, the bread rough, but to her it was a feast. She ate in silence, darting glances at him as if to be sure the offer was real, that he wouldn't snatch it away once her hunger was gone. But when she finished, he refilled her bowl without a word, and something inside her cracked open, trust fragile but growing. Later, by the fire, she curled into the chair he guided her to. Her eyes grew heavy, fighting sleep, until at last her head tipped against the armrest. The cowboy watched her for a long moment, the flicker of flames painting his weathered face. He felt the weight of years of solitude, of nights spent with only silence for company. Yet here was this child, breathing soft and steady, her presence filling a hollow he hadn't even known was there. He leaned back, speaking quietly, though she slept and could not hear. "You'll have safety here, a family if you'll take it, dignity they couldn't strip from you." His hand clenched into a fist on the armrest, a vow forged in firelight. "You'll never face their laughter alone again." The prairie wind howled outside, but within those walls lay a peace neither of them had known. From a mocked orphan, She had become something more, a cherished daughter, a companion in the wide silence of his life. From a hardened cowboy, he had become something else as well, protector, father, redeemer. Two broken lives had met in the dust of cruelty, and together they had found something worth carrying forward. The town had laughed at her sorrow, but the cowboy silenced them forever by placing her on his horse, and never looking back.